It happened over dinner. One minute, I was setting down a plate of roasted chicken golden, perfect, the kind I'd made 1,000 times before. The next, my husband's fork hit the table so hard the sound cracked through our dining room like a gunshot. I froze. David stood up, slowly, deliberately. His chair scraped against the hardwood floor, that awful screech that makes your teeth hurt. And then he looked at me. Not the way you look at someone you've loved for 17 years. The way you look at something that disgusts you. "I'm done," he said. His voice was cold, flat. "I'm done supporting a fat, lazy woman like you." The air left the room. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. I just stood there, holding a dish towel, staring at the man I'd built a life with, the man whose shirts I ironed every Sunday, whose mother I took care of when she had her stroke, whose dreams I funded with my inheritance when his startup tanked in 2019. Our son, Mason 16, all elbows and acne and silence, sat frozen at the table. His eyes darted between us. Wide. Terrified. He didn't say a word. David didn't look at him. Didn't look at me again either. He just walked away. I heard his footsteps echo down the hall. The bedroom door slammed. And then nothing. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears like a drum I couldn't turn off. I looked down. The plate in my hand was cracked clean through the middle. I didn't even remember dropping it. You know what the worst part was? It wasn't the words. It wasn't even the way he said them, like I was some burden he'd been dragging through life, some dead weight he'd finally decided to cut loose. It was the silence that came after. Because in that silence, I realized something. This wasn't new. This had been building for months, maybe years. The little comments, the way he'd look at me when I wore something fitted like I'd committed some crime by existing in my own body, the way he stopped touching me, stopped asking how my day was, stopped seeing me as anything other than the woman who cooked his meals and kept his house running and asked for nothing in return. I had become invisible. And tonight, he made it official. Mason finally moved. He pushed his chair back quietly, like he was afraid to make noise, and mumbled something about homework. He didn't look at me as he left. I stood there alone in the dining room, surrounded by the ruins of a dinner no one would eat, and I thought, this is it. This is what 17 years gets you. A cold house, a silent son, a husband who calls you fat and lazy and walks away like you're nothing. I wanted to cry. I didn't. I just stood there, staring at that cracked plate, feeling something shift inside me. Something dark, something cold. And then my phone rang. I almost didn't answer it. My hands were shaking, my vision was blurred. But it kept ringing, insistent, sharp, cutting through the fog in my head. I picked it up. "Mrs. Chloe Hart?" The voice was professional. Clipped. A woman's voice. Confident and clear. "Yes?" My own voice sounded small, hollow. "This is Jennifer Caldwell from Steinberg and Associates. I'm calling regarding the estate of Dr. Margaret Reeves. Are you available to discuss the details of her will?" He blinked. Dr. Margaret Reeves. My aunt. My mother's older sister. The one who never married, who built a career as a surgeon in Boston, who sent me birthday cards with crisp $50 bills inside, until I turned 30. The one I hadn't spoken to in almost 2 years because life got busy and I kept meaning to call, and then... "I'm sorry," I whispered. "What did you say?" "Dr. Reeves passed away 3 weeks ago," the lawyer said gently. "I've been trying to reach you. You're listed as the primary beneficiary." The room tilted. Primary beneficiary. I didn't know she'd passed. "I understand this is difficult," Miss Caldwell continued. "But there are some time-sensitive matters we need to address. Can you come to our office Monday morning, 9 a.m.? I looked around my dining room, at the cracked plate, the cold chicken, the empty chair where my husband had sat and destroyed me with 7 words. "Yes," I said, "I'll be there." I hung up. And for the first time in hours, maybe months, I took a full breath. Because something had just shifted. Something I didn't understand yet. Something that felt like a door opening in a room I'd thought was locked forever. I set the phone down on the table. Upstairs, I could hear David's TV. Some baseball game. The announcers laughing, the crowd roaring. He was already over it. Already moved on. Like nothing had happened. Like I didn't matter. But I stood there in the quiet, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not hope. Not yet. But something close. Something that tasted like possibility. And for the first time since he'd called me fat and lazy and worthless, I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because David had no idea what was coming. None of them did. The smell of cinnamon always takes me back. It's strange, the things that stick with you. Not the big moments. Not the wedding or the first house or the birth of your child. It's the small things. The morning light through a kitchen window. The sound of coffee brewing at 5 a.m. The way your hands smell like cinnamon and butter after making apple pie for people who will never say thank you. I made a lot of pies in those years. I was 28 when I met David. I was working 2 jobs, administrative assistant during the day, waitress 3 nights a week. My mother had just been diagnosed with early onset dementia, and Mason was 5 years old, all big eyes and questions I didn't always have answers for. His father had left before he could walk, just disappeared one day like smoke, so it was just us, me and my boy. And my mother, who was slowly forgetting my name. David showed up at the restaurant on a Tuesday, tall, confident, with that easy smile that made you feel like everything was going to be okay. He left a $50 tip on a $30 meal and wrote his number on the receipt. For someone who deserves better, it said. I thought he was my second chance. For a while he was. He helped with Mason, took my mother to her appointments when I couldn't get off work, paid for her medication when my insurance wouldn't cover it. He made me feel like I wasn't drowning anymore. Like someone finally saw how hard I was trying. We got married that fall. Small ceremony, just family. I wore a dress I'd bought on sale. Mason walked me down the aisle. I thought I'd found safety. But safety has a price. I just didn't know it yet. The weight came slowly. First it was the stress juggling David's mother's needs when she had her stroke, running his household the way he liked it, making sure Mason stayed on track in school. Then it was the medication they put me on for anxiety. Then it was the thyroid condition nobody caught for 3 years because I kept putting off my own doctor's appointments to take care of everyone else. 20 pounds. 40. 60. David started making comments. Little ones at first. Maybe skip dessert tonight, babe. Or, you used to take better care of yourself. He'd say it with a smile, like he was helping, like he was concerned. I started eating less, working out more. But my body wouldn't cooperate. The weight stayed. And David's comments got sharper. I kept cooking though, every holiday, every birthday, every Sunday dinner. I'd spend hours in the kitchen making his mother's recipes, the ones she'd taught me before the stroke took her speech. Pot roast. Scalloped potatoes. That lemon cake David loved. His whole family would come over, fill their plates, laugh around my table, and I'd hear them whispering in the living room after dinner. She's really let herself go, hasn't she? I don't know how David puts up with it. Poor thing, she used to be so pretty. I'd stand at the sink, washing their dishes, pretending I didn't hear, pretending it didn't crack me open a little more each time. I thought loving someone meant enduring everything, the criticism, the coldness, the way he stopped touching me, stopped seeing me. I thought if I just kept trying, kept giving, kept being good enough, he'd remember why he chose me. I ironed his shirts every Sunday morning while he slept. I managed his calendar, paid his bills, kept his house perfect. When his startup failed and we lost everything, I gave him my inheritance, the money my father left me, the only safety net I had. $47,000, gone in 6 months. He never said thank you. I never asked him to. Because that's what you do when you love someone, right? You give, you sacrifice. You hold the family together even when you're the only one holding on. If you've ever given everything to someone who later turned away, you'll understand this part. You'll know what it feels like to look back and see all those moments of devotion, all that quiet strength, and wonder if any of it mattered. Thank you to everyone who helps keep these stories alive. Every word you share, every act of kindness helps protect those who still believe in family. There's a box in my closet, pushed way back, behind the winter coats and the shoe rack. It's been there for 7 years. A simple cardboard box with my Aunt Margaret's handwriting on the side, "Do not open until necessary." She gave it to me the last time I saw her. We were having lunch in Boston, one of those rare days when I could get away. She looked at me across the table, really looked at me and said, "Chloe, I need you to keep this safe. Don't open it unless you absolutely have to. You'll know when." I'd laughed it off, said okay, brought it home and shoved it in the closet. I never opened it. I never thought I'd need to. But standing there in my dining room, phone still warm in my hand, David's words still burning in my chest, I thought about that box for the first time in years. And I wondered what my aunt had known that I didn't. I found out 3 days later. Not because he told me, not because he felt guilty or had some sudden crisis of conscience. I found out because David is arrogant, and arrogant men get careless. It was Saturday morning. I was in the laundry room folding towels, moving through the motions like I'd done 1,000 times before. David was in his office upstairs, the room he'd claimed as his the day we moved into this house, my house. The one my father's life insurance had paid for. I heard his voice through the vent. At first, I wasn't even listening, just background noise. But then I heard my name, and something in his tone made me stop, made me put down the towel and stand very still. "Yeah, the land deal's going through next week," he said. He sounded pleased. Confident. Chloe's grandmother's property up in Saratoga, 12 acres, waterfront. "I'm selling it to cover the business loan." My stomach dropped. Grandma Rose's land. The place where I spent every summer as a child. Where my mother scattered her ashes. The land that was supposed to go to Mason someday, a piece of our family he could hold on to. Wait, did Chloe agree to that? The voice on the other end was faint, but I could hear it through the speaker. A woman's voice. David laughed, actually laughed. "She doesn't know yet. I forged the signature last month. She never reads anything I put in front of her anyway, too busy feeling sorry for herself." He paused. Her father kept terrible records, easy to access. The estate lawyer's an idiot. By the time she figures it out, the money'll be in my account and the house'll be in Kelly's name. Kelly. His sister. The room started spinning. "You're putting the house in your sister's name?" The woman's voice again. "Younger than mine. Lighter. Just a precaution," David said smoothly. "When the divorce goes through, Chloe won't be able to touch it. And once I get the construction firm inheritance locked in, yeah, her aunt left her controlling shares of some company in Boston. Once that's settled, Chloe won't matter anymore." The words hit me like a fist to the chest. Chloe won't matter anymore. I stood there in the laundry room, surrounded by his clean shirts, his folded socks, the life I'd built and maintained and sacrificed for, and I couldn't breathe. He'd forged my signature. He'd stolen my family's land. He was planning to take the house, my father's house, and put it in someone else's name. And he had a mistress. Of course he had a mistress. I heard him laugh again upstairs, that easy, careless sound, and something inside me went very cold, very quiet. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water. My hands were shaking so hard I spilled it on the counter. I didn't clean it up. I just stood there, staring at the puddle, watching it spread across the marble like spilled blood. The cruelty of it wasn't just the betrayal, it was the efficiency, the planning, the way he'd used my grief, my trust, my exhaustion against me. The way he'd turned my love into a weapon, and then gutted me with it. I thought about every dinner I'd made, every shirt I'd ironed, every time I'd swallowed his criticism and told myself he was just stressed, just tired, just going through a hard time. I thought about the weight I'd gained trying to hold this family together while he dismantled it piece by piece behind my back. And I thought about his voice on that phone, casual and cold. "Chloe won't matter anymore." If you've ever trusted someone so deeply that their betrayal made you question your own worth, you're not alone. Thank you to everyone who helps me tell these stories. Your support keeps this space alive for those who still believe that truth, somehow, will always find its way. I was still standing there when my phone rang. Jennifer Caldwell, the lawyer. I answered on the third ring. My voice came out steady, calm. I didn't recognize it. "Mrs. Hart," she said. "I wanted to follow up on our conversation. There are some additional assets we need to discuss regarding Dr. Reeves's estate." "Additional assets," I repeated. "Yes, your aunt left you controlling shares of Reeves and Harmon Construction. It's a mid-sized firm based in Boston, but they have contracts throughout New England. Annual revenue last year was approximately $42 million. The kitchen went silent. "I'm sorry," I said slowly. "Could you repeat that?" "Your aunt left you 51% controlling shares of the company. You're now the majority owner, Mrs. Hart. The board would like to meet with you as soon as possible to discuss transition plans." I looked up at the ceiling, at the office where my husband was still on the phone with his mistress, plotting how to steal my inheritance, laughing about how I didn't matter. And for the first time in 17 years, I smiled. A real smile. "Tell the board I'll be there Monday," I said. 9 a.m. sharp. I hung up. And I went upstairs to open that box in my closet. The guest room smells like dust and old linen. I moved in here on Sunday, didn't ask permission, didn't announce it. I just took my pillow, my phone charger, and the book I haven't been able to read for 3 months, and I closed the door behind me. David didn't say a word. Neither did Mason. The house is so quiet now, even the walls seem to avoid me. I spend a lot of time staring at the ceiling. There's a crack that runs from the light fixture to the corner, thin, jagged, like a vein. I've counted it 17 times. Sometimes I lose track and start over. It gives me something to do besides think. Downstairs I can hear them. David's voice, low and easy. Mason's laugh, the one he used to save for me when I'd make pancakes on Saturday mornings. Now it's for his father. The man who called me fat and lazy. The man who's poisoning my son against me without ever saying my name. I haven't cooked in 4 days. The kitchen feels like foreign territory now. I went down yesterday to make coffee and found them both already there. David reading the paper, Mason scrolling on his phone. They looked up when I walked in. Not at me, through me. Like I was a ghost haunting my own house. I poured my coffee in silence and left. I heard David say something as I climbed the stairs. I didn't catch the words, but I heard Mason laugh again. That sound follows me everywhere now. I don't leave the house much anymore. When I do, I see the neighbors whispering. Carol from 2 doors down used to bring me tomatoes from her garden every August. Now she crosses the street when she sees me coming. At the grocery store last Tuesday, I overheard 2 women in the produce section. That's her, the one whose husband's leaving. I heard she just let herself go. Stop trying. Well, you can't blame him, can you? I stood there holding a bag of apples, and I wanted to scream, wanted to tell them I didn't stop trying. That I tried so hard I forgot how to stop. That I gave everything, my body, my inheritance, my father's house, and it still wasn't enough. But I didn't say anything. I just put the apples back and left. If you've ever sat in a room so quiet it started to echo your thoughts, you'll understand this silence. Thank you to those who help keep these stories alive. Your kindness helps give voice to people who've been forgotten, who sit alone in their pain, waiting to be seen again. I look at myself in the mirror sometimes. Late at night, when the house is dark and David's asleep in our bed, his bed now, I guess I stand in the bathroom and stare at the woman looking back at me. She's tired. Her eyes are hollow. There are lines around her mouth that weren't there a year ago. Her body is soft, heavy, marked by years of medication and stress, and putting everyone else first. And I think, is this what he sees? Is this all I am now? A woman who gave everything and became nothing. I found the box on Monday. It took me 20 minutes to dig it out from behind the winter coats and old shoe boxes. Cardboard, worn at the edges, sealed with packing tape that had yellowed with age. My aunt's handwriting on the side. Do not open until necessary. I sat on the closet floor and stared at it for a long time. Then I tore it open. Inside, letters. Dozens of them, tied with string, my father's handwriting, letters he'd written to my aunt over the years, some from before I was born, some from after my mother died. I unfolded one at random. Margaret, if anything happens to me, please make sure Chloe knows she's stronger than she thinks. She has a softness in her that the world will try to break. Don't let them. Remind her who she is. My hands shook. Beneath the letters, legal documents. A will I'd never seen. Paperwork for properties I didn't know existed. And at the very bottom, a single card in my aunt's handwriting. Chloe, if they ever turn on you, remember, you were born stronger than them. I sat there on the closet floor, surrounded by 17 years of silence and sacrifice, holding my father's words in my hands. And I cried. Not the gentle tears that come when you're sad. The kind that rip through you like a storm, violent and consuming, the kind you've been holding back so long they burn on the way out. I cried for the girl I used to be, for the woman I'd tried so hard to become, for every meal I'd cooked, every shirt I'd ironed, every insult I'd swallowed because I thought love meant endurance. I cried until my chest ached and my throat burned and there was nothing left. And then I stopped. I wiped my face. I stood up. And I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not hope. Not yet. But clarity. The switch flipped. I knew exactly what I had to do. The lawyer's office smelled like leather and old paper. Jennifer Caldwell sat across from me, a thin folder open on the desk between us. She'd asked me to come alone. No David, no Mason, just me. "Mrs. Hart," she said quietly, "I need to show you something." I nodded. My hands were folded in my lap, perfectly still. I'd stopped shaking 2 days ago. Something had shifted inside me, gone cold and clear, like water freezing over. She slid a document across the desk. "Your aunt didn't just leave you the construction company. Your father, before he passed, transferred several assets into a trust. He named your aunt as executor, and you as sole beneficiary. The trust was designed to remain dormant until either your mother's death or a triggering event." "What kind of event?" My voice sounded strange, calm, like it belonged to someone else. "Fraud. Forgery. Attempted theft of marital assets." She paused. "Mrs. Hart, your father knew someone might try to take advantage of you someday. He built in protections." The room felt very small suddenly. She pulled out another sheet. "The trust includes a development company in Albany, 3 commercial properties in Boston, and a savings account your husband never knew existed. Total value, approximately $8.3 million. I stared at the number. "Your husband," Jennifer continued, her voice steady and professional, "has been attempting to illegally transfer these assets for the past 11 months. He forged your signature on multiple documents, filed false claims with the estate court, used your grief after your mother's passing to access records he had no legal right to." She looked at me, really looked at me. "Mrs. Hart, I'm afraid your husband planned this for years." The words settled over me like snow. Quiet. Heavy. Final. "So he thought I was powerless," I said. It wasn't a question. Jennifer didn't answer. She didn't need to. I thought about David upstairs in his office, laughing on the phone with his mistress, bragging about how easy it was, how I never read anything he put in front of me, how I'd just sign and smile and disappear. "There's more," Jennifer said gently. She pulled out a bank statement. "Your joint account. He drained it 3 days ago. Transferred $47,000 to an account in his sister's name. My inheritance. The money my father left me. The safety net I'd given David when his business failed. Gone." I felt something crack open inside my chest. Not pain. Not anymore. Clarity. If you've ever found truth in the quiet moments after pain, you know what this part feels like. Thank you to everyone who supports these stories. Your kindness keeps hope alive for people still finding their voice after betrayal. Jennifer reached for another folder, thicker this time. She held it for a moment, her eyes searching mine. "Mrs. Hart," she said softly, "would you like to see the evidence of his affair?" I looked at the folder, plain manila, nothing special, just paper and ink and proof that the man I'd loved for 17 years had been living a different life behind my back. I thought about all the dinners I'd made, all the shirts I'd ironed, all the times I'd apologized for taking up space in my own home. I thought about his voice, "I'm done supporting a fat, lazy woman like you." And I thought about my father's words, written years ago, as if he'd known this moment would come. "If they ever turn on you, remember, you were born stronger than them." I reached across the desk. "Yes," I said, "show me everything." Jennifer opened the folder. And I began to see my husband, really see him for the first time in years. There comes a point when silence stops meaning defeat. It becomes preparation. I sat in the guest room that Tuesday morning, the folder from Jennifer's office spread across the bed. Photographs. Bank statements. Text messages between David and a woman named Amber, 32, works in marketing, met him at a conference in Chicago 2 years ago. The affair had been going on longer than our son had been in high school. I stared at the evidence for a long time, waiting for the tears to come. They didn't. Instead, I felt something else. Something cold and clear and sharp as winter light through glass. I picked up my phone and made 3 calls. First, a forensic accountant Jennifer recommended, a woman named Rita Chen who specialized in uncovering hidden assets in divorce cases. She answered on the second ring, and her voice was all business. "Mrs. Hart, Jennifer told me you might call. When can you come in?" "Tomorrow," I said. "Early." Second, a locksmith. I scheduled him for Friday afternoon, when David would be at his office and Mason at school. Third, the bank. I opened a new account, just mine. Then I called our joint account and froze it. Each keystroke felt like cutting through chains. I didn't tell David any of this. That night I made dinner, pot roast the way he liked it, mashed potatoes, green beans. I set the table with the good plates, poured him a glass of wine, and smiled when he walked through the door. "This looks great, babe," he said, surprised. He actually looked at me. "You feeling better?" "Much better," I said. He didn't notice the edge in my voice. He never did. For years, I mistook generosity for love. Now, I'm learning the quiet math of self-respect. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a different person. Not all at once, in small, deliberate movements, each one invisible to everyone but me. I met Rita at her office in Midtown. She walked me through the financials with surgical precision. "Your husband's been moving money for months," she said, pointing to highlighted transactions. "Small amounts at first, then larger. He's building a case to claim the marriage is financially unstable, that you're a liability." "Can we trace it?" I asked. "Every penny," she said, "and we will." I hired a private investigator. His name was Marcus, a retired NYPD detective with tired eyes and a reputation for discretion. He gave me a small recording device, showed me how to use it. "Only record conversations you're part of," he said. "New York's a one-party consent state. Anything else is inadmissible." I nodded. That night, I left the device on the kitchen counter while David took a call. I was washing dishes, humming softly. He didn't even glance my way. "Yeah, the house transfer's almost done," he said into the phone. "Kelly's got the paperwork. Once Chloe's name is off the deed, she's got nothing." He laughed. "She won't even know until it's too late." I kept washing dishes, kept humming. The recording was crystal clear. At home, I played a role I'd been practicing for 17 years, the devoted wife. I cooked. I cleaned. I asked David about his day. I smiled at Mason across the dinner table, even when he wouldn't meet my eyes. And every night after they went to bed, I worked. I scanned documents, organized files, cross-referenced bank statements with the evidence Rita was building. I found the forged signatures, my name in David's handwriting, clumsy and careless. I found the emails between him and his sister, planning how to liquidate Chloe's assets before the divorce. I saved everything. Jennifer helped me quietly transfer the property titles back: my father's house, the land in Saratoga, the commercial buildings in Boston. One by one, I took them back. The paperwork was filed at night, processed in silence. David never noticed. He thought I was broken. He got bolder, crueler. "You know what your problem is?" he said one night, standing in the kitchen doorway while I made him a sandwich he didn't ask for. "You never stood up for yourself. You just let life happen to you." I looked at him, really looked at him, and I smiled. "You're right," I said softly. I did. He seemed satisfied with that. It's funny how silence can sound like thunder when guilt starts to echo. Then Marcus called. "Mrs. Hart, you need to see this." I met him at a diner in Queens. He slid a folder across the table. Inside, financial records showing David had taken out a loan in my name, forged my signature, defaulted on purpose. He was staging a collapse, planning to blame me, ruin my credit, leave me with nothing. "He's setting you up to look financially incompetent," Marcus said. "So when the divorce goes through, he can claim you're unstable, unfit. He'll walk away clean, and you'll be left holding the debt." I stared at the papers. They taught me that love meant giving. Today, I'm teaching myself that love can also mean stopping. I closed the folder. "Not this time," I whispered. And I went home to finish what I'd started. The boardroom was all glass and steel and cold winter light. I arrived 15 minutes early. Jennifer walked beside me, her briefcase heavy with evidence, her expression calm and professional. We didn't speak in the elevator. There was nothing left to say. Everything that mattered was on the flash drive in my pocket. The board members were already seated when we entered. 7 men and 2 women, most of them my father's age, all of them watching me with careful, measured expressions. They knew who I was now. The majority shareholder, Margaret Reeves's niece. The woman who'd inherited 51% of a $42 million company. What they didn't know yet was what I was about to do with it. David walked in at exactly 9 o'clock. He looked good. Confident. He wore the navy suit I'd bought him for our anniversary 2 years ago, the one he said made him feel like he could close any deal. His hair was freshly cut. His shoes were polished. He smiled at the board members as he took his seat, nodding like he belonged there. He still didn't know I owned the company. He thought he was here for a promotion. The board chair, a silver-haired man named Robert Harmon, cleared his throat. Thank you all for coming. Before we begin, I'd like to turn the floor over to Mrs. Chloe Hart, our new majority shareholder. Mrs. Hart, would you like to address the board? David's head snapped toward me. His smile faltered. I stood up slowly, smoothed my skirt, walked to the front of the room. Thank you, Robert, I said. My voice was steady, calm. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. I pulled the flash drive from my pocket and held it up. I'd like to share something with the board, something that directly impacts the integrity and future of this company. I plugged the drive into the projector. The screen lit up. David's face appeared first, a photo from his LinkedIn, confident, professional, smiling. Then a series of documents filled the screen. Bank statements, forged signatures, email chains between him and his sister Kelly discussing how to transfer Chloe's assets and secure the company inheritance. The room went silent. This is my husband, David Hart, I said quietly. Some of you may know him. He's been consulting for Reeves and Harmon for the past 6 months, brought in by the previous CFO as a financial advisor. I clicked to the next slide. Audio began to play. David's voice, recorded in our kitchen 3 weeks ago. Once I get the construction firm inheritance locked in, Chloe won't matter anymore. Someone gasped. I didn't look at David. I kept my eyes on the screen. This recording was made in my home, I continued. It's one of several in which my husband discusses his plans to fraudulently access and control assets left to me by my late aunt, Dr. Margaret Reeves. Next slide, the forged documents. My signature badly copied, obviously fake on property transfer forms, loan applications, estate claims. He forged my signature on multiple legal documents. He accessed my late father's estate records illegally. He sold property that belonged to my family without my knowledge or consent. I clicked again. Text messages appeared. David and a woman named Amber. Intimate, explicit. Planning trips while I stayed home cooking his dinner. The room was so quiet I could hear the hum of the projector. He's also been having an affair for the past 2 years, I said. My voice didn't shake. While telling me I was fat, lazy, and worthless. While draining our joint account. While planning to leave me homeless and blame me for financial instability he deliberately created. I turned to face the board. My husband told me he wouldn't support a fat, lazy woman, I said softly. And he was right. Because starting today, he doesn't get to support anyone. He works for no one. David stood up. His face was white. Chloe, this isn't what it looks like. Sit down, Mr. Hart, Robert said coldly. David looked around the room. No one met his eyes. I pulled out the final document. The forensic accounting report Rita had prepared. Your financial advisor has also been embezzling from this company. Small amounts at first, then larger. He used his consulting position to access accounts he had no authorization to touch. The total is approximately $340,000. I slid the report across the table to Robert. I'm recommending immediate termination, I said. And I'm filing criminal charges for fraud, forgery, and theft. Robert looked at the report, then at David, then back at me. All in favor of terminating David Hart's contract and banning him from any future association with Reeves and Harmon? 9 hands went up. Unanimous. David opened his mouth, closed it. He looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw it. The moment he realized he'd lost. That I wasn't the broken woman crying in the guest room anymore. That I'd become someone he didn't recognize. Someone he couldn't control. Security will escort you out, Robert said quietly. David stood. His hands were shaking. Chloe, please. I looked at him. The man I'd loved for 17 years. The man who'd called me worthless. Who'd stolen from me. Who'd planned to leave me with nothing. Goodbye, David, I said. And I walked out of the room with my head high. After the verdict, silence became my favorite sound. It was the sound of justice finally breathing. I didn't stay to watch David get escorted out of the building. I didn't need to. Jennifer walked me to my car, her hand briefly touching my shoulder, a gesture of quiet solidarity, and then I drove home through the gray November afternoon, the city moving around me like it always had, indifferent and eternal. The consequences came slowly. Then all at once. David's family called first. His mother, Patricia, the woman I'd cared for after her stroke, whose medications I'd organized, whose appointments I'd never missed, she left a voicemail. Her voice was cold, clipped, like she was reading from a script. "Chloe, after what you've done to David, we can no longer associate with you. Please don't contact us again." I listened to it once, then deleted it. His sister Kelly, the one who'd helped him forge documents, who'd put my house in her name, tried a different approach. She sent a text. "You've destroyed him. I hope you're proud." I blocked her number. The mistress, Amber, lasted exactly 4 days. According to Marcus, who was still tracking things peripherally, she'd visited David once at the apartment he'd rented in Queens. 20 minutes later, she walked out and blocked his number. Whatever he'd told her, whatever promises he'd made dissolved the moment she realized he had nothing left to offer. No money, no job, no future. Just debt and scandal and a criminal investigation that was moving faster than he could run. The bank froze his accounts. The forensic audit had flagged transactions going back 18 months, wire transfers, forged checks, unauthorized withdrawals. They were building a case for fraud and embezzlement that would take years to untangle. His car got repossessed on a Tuesday morning. I know because Mason came home from school and mentioned it, his voice flat and distant. "Dad's Audi got towed," he said. He was pretty upset. I didn't ask for details. I just nodded and asked if he wanted dinner. David's friends disappeared, one by one. The golf buddies, the startup bros, the men who used to come over for Sunday football and drink my beer and leave their plates on the coffee table, they all went silent. Blocked his calls, stopped answering texts. People say loyalty lasts until the money runs out. In David's case, it lasted about 72 hours. I didn't need to ruin them. Their lies had already done that. The final blow came 3 weeks later. David showed up at the house. My house. The one my father's life insurance had paid for. The one David had tried to steal by putting it in his sister's name. He rang the doorbell at 6 p.m. on a Friday. I opened the door and found him standing there, disheveled, unshaven, his eyes red-rimmed and hollow. "Chloe," he said. "Please, we need to talk." "No," I said quietly. "We don't. This is my house too." "No," I said again, "it's not." I handed him the court order Jennifer had filed that morning. Legal eviction notice. The property had been returned to my name. The forged documents invalidated. Every fraudulent claim dismissed. "You have 72 hours to remove your belongings," I said. "After that, anything left will be discarded." His face crumpled. "Chloe, please. I'm sorry. I made mistakes, but goodbye, David." I closed the door, gently, no slamming, no theatrics, just peace. Through the window, I watched him stand there for a long moment, staring at the door like he couldn't believe it was real. Then he turned and walked to the curb, where his sister's beat-up Honda was waiting. The neighbors were watching. Carol from 2 doors down, the Johnsons across the street. They'd all seen the sheriff's car earlier that week when the eviction order was served. They'd all heard the whispers, the affair, the fraud, the lies. Now they watched David Hart, the man who used to park his Audi in the driveway and talk about his big deals, climb into a rusted sedan and drive away. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt quiet. They used to whisper that I'd lost my mind. Now they avoided their own reflections. That night, I found an old wedding photo tucked behind a book on the shelf. David and me, 17 years younger, smiling in front of a justice of the peace in Brooklyn. I looked at it for a long time, at the girl I used to be, the one who thought love meant endurance, who thought sacrifice was the same as devotion. Then I tore it in half and dropped it in the trash. Some debts don't need to be collected. Life has its own way of balancing the books. Mason came downstairs an hour later. He stood in the doorway, watching me make tea, and for the first time in months, he spoke without being asked. "Mom," he said quietly, "I'm sorry." I turned to look at him. 16 years old, tall now, almost a man. His eyes were wet. "I believed him," Mason whispered. I thought. "I know," I said. And I opened my arms. He crossed the kitchen and let me hold him, and we stood there in the warm yellow light, 2 people finding their way back to each other through the wreckage. Outside, the November wind rattled the windows. Inside, for the first time in years, my house felt like home. After the noise fades, what's left isn't victory, it's understanding. I spent the first week after the eviction just breathing. Really breathing. The kind of deep, slow breaths you take when you realize you've been holding your chest tight for years and finally, your body remembers how to let go. The house felt different, lighter. I walked through rooms that had once felt like a museum of my failures. The kitchen where David had called me lazy, the dining room where he'd walked away, and now they were just rooms. Wood floors, windows. Space waiting to be filled with something new. I hired painters, changed the walls from beige to soft gray, ripped out the heavy curtains David's mother had insisted on, and replaced them with sheer linen that let the light pour through. I bought new dishes, simple white ones, nothing fancy, and got rid of everything that reminded me of dinners no one appreciated. Mason helped, quietly at first, then with more presence. We painted his room together one Saturday, listening to music he liked, not talking much but working side by side. He chose navy blue, said it felt calm. "Mom," he said, rolling paint carefully along the trim, "I'm really sorry. For everything." "I know, sweetheart." I should have seen what he was doing. I should have. "You were a kid," I said gently. "You loved your father. That's not something to apologize for." He nodded, but I could see the guilt still sitting on his shoulders. So I made an appointment with a therapist, Dr. Sarah Brennan, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense way of talking that Mason responded to immediately. We went together at first, then he went alone. Slowly, week by week, I watched him start to stand straighter, smile more, look me in the eye again. Forgiveness isn't a single moment, it's 1,000 small gestures, over months, until one day you realize the weight is gone. Justice isn't about watching them fall, it's about standing again without hate. I started working with the board at Reeves and Harmon, not as a figurehead, but as an active partner. I met with project managers, reviewed contracts, learned the business my father and aunt had built. It was hard, I made mistakes. But I also made decisions that mattered: ethical hiring practices, fair wages, community investment programs that put people before profit. And I started something new. A fund for women escaping financial abuse. Women who'd been controlled, manipulated, trapped by partners who used money as a weapon. I called it the Margaret Reeves Foundation, after my aunt, the woman who'd seen this coming, who'd protected me even after she was gone. We helped 32 women in the first 6 months. Paid for lawyers, secured housing, provided financial literacy training, gave them what I'd been given, a chance to rebuild. Every time I signed a check, I thought about the girl I used to be. The one who believed love meant giving everything, even when it left you with nothing. I used to believe love meant giving everything. Now I know love also means knowing when to stop. One evening in early spring, I sat on the back porch with a cup of tea and watched the sun set over the neighborhood. The sky was soft pink and gold, the air smelled like rain and new grass, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt peaceful. Not happy, not yet, but peaceful. I thought about my father, about the letters he'd written, the protections he'd built, the way he'd tried to shield me even from beyond the grave. And I thought about my Aunt Margaret, brilliant, fierce, alone but never lonely, who'd known exactly what I'd need when the world turned cold. "Thank you," I whispered to the empty air, "both of you." The wind moved through the trees, soft and steady, and I imagined them hearing me, imagined them proud. I thought about David too, not with anger anymore, not even with satisfaction, just with clarity. He'd taught me something important, even if he hadn't meant to, that some people see kindness as weakness, that generosity without boundaries isn't love, it's surrender, that you can give and give and give, and some people will only see what else they can take. But he'd also taught me something he never intended, that I was stronger than I knew, that silence could be power, that walking away wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. If my story teaches anything, it's this: kindness without boundaries isn't love, it's surrender. Mason came outside and sat beside me. We didn't talk, just sat together, watching the light fade, two people finding their way back to each other one quiet evening at a time. "You okay, Mom?" he asked after a while. I smiled. "Yeah, sweetheart, I really am." And I meant it. Inside the house, the new curtains moved gently in the breeze. The walls were fresh, the air was clear, the ghosts were gone. Justice gave me back my name. But peace gave me back myself. If you've ever lost yourself trying to love someone who only saw your worth in numbers, I hope my story reminds you, it's never too late to choose yourself. Thank you for keeping these stories alive, stories where justice doesn't shout, it heals. I stood up, brushed off my jeans, and went inside to make dinner. Not for anyone else. Just for me and my son. And that, I realized, was enough. More than enough. It was everything.